A lot has changed in the 5 years since Jungle Beat released, and playing the game today, you see a lot of things we simply couldn't in 2005. Like a light bulb suddenly turning on after a blackout, it's instantly clear that some of Nintendo's most original design and development concepts over the last several years were based on ideas first tried in this widely overlooked GameCube platformer. But before we get into the game's legacy and the surprising list of titles which arguably owe much of their existence to this one's trailblazing, let's go over the game itself. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is a 2D platform game in which players take control of Nintendo's senior-most icon on a new quest to become the undisputed King of the Jungle. Now, obviously, story and premise weren't exactly focal points for invention. There are no narrative pleasantries or video sequences to speak of, but there really didn't need to be. Like so many Nintendo classics, Jungle Beat is all about what you're doing, not why you're doing it. Where the game does break ground, though, is in gameplay and development philosophy. Released to retail just a few months after the Nintendo DS, Jungle Beat was developed during a period in which Nintendo was really starting to focus on pushing new ways to control and interface with video games. And for this title, that meant a clever new control gimmick tied to the game's protagonist. A controller shaped like bongos. And you thought the Wii was weird. You see, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is played entirely, and without exception, by clapping and slapping. Drum the right bongo to move to the right, drum the left bongo to move to the left, and pound them together to jump. As if that weren't bizarre enough, the bongos also include a built-in microphone, so clapping plays a huge role in Jungle Beat as well, allowing you to stun foes, to collect bananas, and more. If you live in an apartment or dorm, playing Jungle Beat is a great way to get evicted, as the constant slapping and pounding can get really loud. But what's neat about the control mechanic is that it doesn't feel tacked onto the experience. In fact, the game's design and its controller feel remarkably linked, and if you go through them the right way, you'll find there's actually a bit of a rhythm to each level. But my favorite thing about the bongo-based control scheme is the incredibly tactile feel it gives to the combat. Beating the drums with your hands and watching Donkey Kong pummel his foes on screen is one of the most fun and satisfying control experiences I've had in any game. It just feels awesome, and unlike detached Wii remote waggling, it's also as precise as pressing buttons. There are 16 worlds with 3 levels apiece, and depending on how many bananas you collect, you can earn bronze, silver, gold, or platinum medals in each of them, which is actually a pretty rewarding endeavor given the game's challenging system of airborne combos. As soon as Donkey Kong lands, the combo breaks, so you have to figure out the best ways to string together your jumps. But as I mentioned, I think what's more interesting than the game itself is its surprising impact, which is most obvious in its control mechanic. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat feels like a Wii game in spirit, which is perhaps a big reason it was ported to the console last year. Nintendo has always had a history of trying new ways to connect their players to their games, but there's a direct relationship between this attempt and the company's ultimate achievement of that goal with the Wii. We couldn't have known it at the time, but Jungle Beat's heart-pounding and sweat-inducing control mechanic was very much a glance into where the company was headed, a physically intensive, get-off-the-couch harbinger of things to come. Moreover, the game has also had a real impact on the industry at large. The 2D platformer was a lost art in 2005, especially on the home console front. But looking at what Nintendo has done since the release of Jungle Beat, it's evident that this game was not only an effective proof of concept, but a catalyst for the revival of the 2D flatformer. The landscape for games like this was utterly bleak in 2005, but today, they're once again prevalent across the entire industry. Now, is that because of Jungle Beat directly? Well, no, it can probably be attributed more to games like New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. But in some ways, New Super Mario Bros. Can be attributed to Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, a title which beat it to retail by more than a year and was, coincidentally, developed by the same team. Just as he had back in 1981, one could argue Mario had again stepped on Donkey Kong's shoulders with New Super Mario Bros. But the influences he borrowed from Jungle Beat are perhaps even more obvious in Super Mario Galaxy, if only because of the obvious aesthetic nods. From both design and technical perspectives, from their enemy design to their beautiful fur shading and their hazy orange lava glow, Nintendo's EAD team used many of the graphics techniques it first tried in Jungle Beat in Galaxy, albeit to greater effect. Indeed, it's not until you revisit Jungle Beat that you realize how much DNA it shares with two of Nintendo's biggest and best games of the last 2 decades.